Hello.
Hi,
Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Father Rick Ginther. I'm the pastor of Our Lady of Lourdes here in Indianapolis, and I'm the Ecumenical and Interreligious Officer for the Archdiocese.
What does that mean?
It means that I work with the Archbishop, parishes, and anybody in the Archdiocese to do relation work with other Christians and other religions.
Okay. We are here. We've been talking about Catholic social teaching. And when I passed you in the hallway, I asked you a question about the history of Catholic social teaching because I kind of felt like a bad Catholic. And those who have listened to any of the other interviews and conversations that we've had, I've told people that, I knew some of the basic tenets, but it was never presented to me as this is Catholic social teaching. And so I felt like I'd missed something or it was a secret that it was being kept from me and my contemporaries of my age. And then when I was talking to you, you said not so much, that it's just been recently, depending on how old you are and how time passes for you, that it's been presented in this construct. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I think the first thing it shows is knowing the history tells you a lot about the thought.
Okay.
Where did it come from? It really begins in the scripture, especially the prophets, the value of the human person, the poor, the widow, the orphan, thou shalt not kill. It's buried in there, and
And that's what we got when we were in school.
right. That's the basics, and then Jesus takes it and continues to build upon that. He's always taking care of people with common needs, and he somehow connects with them constantly. Over the centuries, there's always been, for the first 1900 years of the church, there was always a sense of caring for the poor, the needy, caring for the human person, valuing them. We have a cadre of saints who specifically founded religious orders or worked closely with those who were most in need. And they could be anything from
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa, more current,
Mm-hmm.
but St. Louis, the King of France, the only king of France ever to be named a saint, who at times would have 100 people come and sit, of the poor, come and have lunch with him. And sometimes he would serve them because they were his subjects and he was responsible for them.
When you say he would serve them, he physically
He
would serve them?
physically would serve them sometimes.
So, not unlike Jesus washing the feet of his
Exactly,
apostles.
exactly. There was always also a sense of that the church was responsible for, creating hospitals and hospices, and any time there was someone in need, we should respond to the need. It wasn't until the end of the 19th century that Pope Leo XIII wrote an encyclical called Rerum Novarum. And that's the beginning of a global vision about humanity and how human beings should be cared for, and that this is everybody's responsibility. Flowing from that into the 20th century, there were still a few more bits and pieces said, but the documents of the Second Vatican Council, whether it's Gaudium et Spes or Lumen Gentium or the Declaration on Religious Freedom, the Declaration on Ecumenism, and the one on interreligious relations, all of those are rooted in the dignity of the human person. And they speak clearly of that. And Pope John the 23rd, in two of his encyclicals, Mater Magister and Pacem in Terris, Mater Magister, mother and teacher, and the other is peace on earth, he focused on those basic concepts of we are a world, we have to learn how to take care of each other. And we do that because God is the creator and we are valuable. Genesis. And God saw that it was very good on the sixth day. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, and maybe you're getting to this. So we've had bits and pieces of this, and we're even from, basics when you're little and exposed to the Ten Commandments.
Right.
You get the, caring for others and what should be done for the common good and how you can have this set of principles. But when did it kind of fall under this doctrine of Catholic social teaching?
Not until the last maybe 30 years that it all just sort of coalesced after statements by Pope John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, John Paul II, Benedict the 16th, and Francis, and the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, whether it was their document in, I think it was 1983 or 4, on disabusing ourselves of nuclear arms. They weren't necessary. And then they did another document later on the economy and how human beings are not to serve the economy. The economy is to serve the human being. It was then all the pieces started to come together, and the church finally says, oh, there's a pattern here. And it's like a thread that runs through it. So that's why you start with the dignity of the human person and then go all the way through care of creation. And everything in between, the other 5 of the 7, are tied to the first, the dignity of the human person, whether we're talking about then, family and doing things together, whether we're talking about feeding the poor, whether it's about care for life in general.
Option for workers and workers' rights.
Oh, and it all comes together in the sense of solidarity, in the sense of the dignity of work, and it's the dignity of the human person that leads to the dignity of the work. And we have to be careful that people are given the chance for dignified work.
And you mentioned, even further back, that the economy should work for people. Mm-hmm. That's a message that was repeated in Laudato Si, just a few years back. It's interesting because we often get the pushback. Shouldn't religion and politics be separate? Why is there anything like the Catholic Conference? Why are even religious leaders coming together to go down to the state house and speak out on issues? And you referenced it early on, that a lot of things that relate to the public, educating, hospitals, caring for the poor, caring for the sick. Churches and private institutions have been doing that long before government kind of got its act together and said, these are needs we need to address. I mean, when you go way, way back, it was kind of every man for themselves until the church and other private entities started looking after these interests.
Right. And I always find it fascinating and disturbing at the same time when people, when they hear about Catholic social teachings, they say, well, that's politics. We don't belong in that. No. What you're doing is you're thinking of one set of political ideology that speaks with some of the same values, but not necessarily are they going through the thought process of how can we do this for the good of everybody. And so it's dismissed. The Catholic social teaching is dismissed because it sounds too much like liberal sort of ideology.
Well, we just heard that from a deacon not too long ago. If they mention Catholic social teaching, people are against it because they think it's political. But the same congregation, the same parish, will rally together to do things that promote the common good to help. But you can't call it Catholic social teaching.
Right. And the sad part is it's Catholic. And that should be the governing term, not social teaching. But it is Catholic social teaching. But it's these words that trigger bias that are, and it's the person who has the bias that dismisses the reality because they don't like the words.
Well, and I often wonder what the motivation is, because it seems like there are people who, under normal circumstances, are people of goodwill and good intention, and then they lose the ability to discern the difference between Catholic social teaching as a roadmap for us to help others and be better people and be better Catholics, and something that's political, and what we saw with people saying Black Lives Matter. Oh, well, that group is anti-family. And it's like, well, you don't have to believe in the group that founded Black Lives Matter to say that Black Lives Matter.
Right.
And people above a certain intelligence level, which is not a really high bar, should be able to make that distinction. And they should be able to make the distinction between what is political and what the church is giving you a blueprint on how to be a better person so that we can have a better planet.
But I think the distinction really comes down to looking at Catholic social teaching and looking at the scriptural basis for it and the teaching documents and actually reading them, and then seeing how the scripture and other documents, the words of saints over the centuries, all interpenetrate. And they reference that which has gone before. So you're going to be reading something from Pope Francis, and he may be quoting something from Pope John the 23rd or Pope Paul the 6th or any of his predecessors who have written in this way.
So this is, what you're saying is this is not new. We didn't come up with some new-fangled, of the moment, or to use other terminology, this new woke thing. This is something based in Scripture that's been around for a long time, and we put it in for some people, a more digestible package to access.
And yes, and what it shows as well is that it's taken a while for us to coalesce all these thoughts and see the thread that holds them together, and just the statement that every human person, their life is the preeminent value. When you say that and you start looking at all of these, they all are there to support that. But it's coalesced well over a century of continual thinking and dialogue and looking at the scripture, the traditions, and saying that, we may have done things differently in the past, but we now know that we can't be doing those things anymore.
Right.
So that's why we oppose slavery. We oppose capital punishment. Why? Because they violate the dignity of the human person. Human trafficking, it violates the dignity of the human person. That's one of the reasons I love Catholicism, is because it takes its time and then will coalesce, and there is a sense that, it ties together. Now, it's not easy.
And we're humans, and so we've made mistakes along the way, and so it takes a while to get on the right track.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the New Testament, slavery was part of the culture. We're beyond that. Okay? It doesn't mean that, Paul in his writings made it clear, if you're a slave, be just to your master, and if you are a master, you be just to your servants. Okay? But we're beyond that now. We don't have that sort of sense of, no, what we have is the sense that demeans the person.
Exactly.
Both the owner and the slave. That just demeans the whole concept of the shared humanity. So
if you had to, if someone were starting on this journey of reacquainting themselves with Catholic social teaching, where would you advise them to start?
I would go to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops website. Actually, what I would do is Google, that's not a commercial, but that's the engine I use. Mm-hmm. Just type in Catholic social teaching, and about the fifth one down will come up United States Conference of Catholic Bishops.
We can make it even easier. We can provide links.
Yes. So, and you go there, and it outlines the basics of all seven. Where did they come from? It has some scripture passages. Then it has quotes from various documents of popes and bishops' conferences, etc. And that's a good place to start. A really good place just to see the compendium, if you will. Mm-hmm. It's about 4 pages for each one. Yeah. Then it also provides you links to the documents that are being quoted. So if one of those quotes interests you because you trust one of the popes more than another, which is what human beings do,
okay,
go to that and read the whole document. See how it holds together. And then as you're reading, especially if you read it online, the footnotes are going to be easy to find. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, oh my gosh, look at how he's quoting this and this and this and this. So it shows the organic nature mm-hmm. of it. And that's really what's happened in the last 100 and some years. It's grown organically from the real life situation and our examining how we care for each other or don't. I would say World War I and World War II definitely had a part to play in the reflecting on the value of the human person.
And you know what's great about it, even though it's Catholic social teaching, we can, say Catholic with a small c, universal social teaching. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, and I say this often at the State House, you do not have to be Catholic to appreciate these tenets and these values.
Right.
Everyone should, respect the dignity of life and the things that flow from that. And we all should want for our relatives, our children, our grandchildren to have, clean air, clean water, green spaces to play in without mm-hmm. thinking that, the planet is going to combust in 40 or 50 years because we're not taking care of it.
Right.
And so you don't have to be Catholic to look at these things and try to use them as a guide.
No, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is in the documents of every major religion in the world.
Yep. Yep.
There's some form of the same thing, same basic truth. So when I see things like that, I say, oh, okay, so in my ecumenical and interreligious work, we already got a tie together. Mm-hmm. That makes for the common good, for how can we work together on things about which we agree already, and how we have a certain commonality. And that starts to also cook, if you will, this sense of solidarity of humanity. Mm-hmm. For me, it's all like this. It's all interrelated. Sometimes there are gaps, but that's mostly because we can't see what connects.
And we create those divisions.
Right.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Well, you're welcome.
I also want to thank you for saying that it didn't really come together until about 30 years ago, which means I was not asleep in religion class in high school. Important point. But it does. It provides a better understanding to know the history and to see that it's rooted in Scripture and it's been around for a long time. But because, humans being what they are, it has been easier for it to be put together in a format that we can easily digest.
Individuals learn, make connections, and then groups of individuals learn and make connections together. And then in the sense of the Catholic Church, the same thing goes on with our reflection, and eventually it gets set down and we go, oh, that's a gift.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
God bless.
Thank you, and you as well.